I'm sure you've heard the advice that in order to grow and be a happier person, you have got to cut the toxic people out of your life. You know, it seems like everyone online is saying it right now.
The people that you spend time with are going to make or break your dreams. Everybody don't deserve to be around you. You got to defend your light with your life.
And generally, I agree with that advice. I think I even told you that you need to do a friend cleanse when people get negative. I got no time for negativity, especially from people online. But there's a major difference between a toxic person online and a toxic friend or family member in real life. Look, if the toxic person is online or it's an acquaintance from a long time ago, that's easy. Just hit delete, because there's absolutely no reason why you should tolerate anything but positive, hilarious, and inspiring content in your social media feeds. In fact, I personally unfollow people all week long. And I've even noticed that as my goals and my priorities change, the accounts that I follow change too. But let's talk about the harder issue. How do you unfriend someone in real life? First of all, if it's a friend or family member that's starting to rub you the wrong way, don't be an ass. Don't ghost people. Don't ignore them. That behavior is not only cowardly, it is also toxic on your part too. When you have somebody in your life that is toxic, it's an opportunity for you to grow. Because this person didn't start off toxic, they probably turned toxic. When somebody turns toxic, it almost always is a sign that there's something either wrong with them or there's something going on with you. So before you unfriend someone in real life, I want you to stop and make sure you've done your part of being a friend. Now, there's a simple two-part test that you should give yourself before you unfriend somebody. Here's what you do. Step one, ask yourself, what emotion comes up for me? Worry and concern? Or is it resentment and annoyance? If it's worry and concern that comes up for you when you think about this person, very simple answer on your hands here. Pick up the phone and just reach out. But if what's coming up for you when you think about this person is resentment and annoyance, it's time for you to go a little deeper to step two. The second thing I want you to do is I want you to ask yourself, why are you annoyed? Why do you resent this person? And look, if you're annoyed because they're a shallow, backstabbing and their behavior is violating your values and boundaries, easy, unfriend. However, even the in your life can teach you something. If you look a little deeper when you ask yourself the question, why am I so annoyed by this person? There's almost always something going on with you, because there's a lot of jerks in the world that you're going to bump into that don't trigger you at all. But there's something about this person that's striking something deeper that you need to deal with. You're triggered. And a trigger is always an opportunity for you to heal something. Unfriending somebody is the easy way out, but when you do it, you miss out on a powerful moment of self-reflection and growth. The fact is, the negativity that you're feeling, the resentment, the annoyance, the judgment, it's toxic inside of you. And so giving yourself a moment before you unfriend, that is powerful, because the negativity you feel, the resentment, the toxicity, it disappears when you stop yourself from throwing in the towel and you choose to throw yourself and your friend a lifeline instead. And here's the reason why it's so important for you to stop and reflect for real. Friendships are a give and take, and you are a part of the give and take. And if you give this friend the cold shoulder, you're going to take this pattern of ghosting people and unfriending people and deciding that people are toxic into every future friendship that you create. And I promise you, whatever it is that's triggering you right now in this friend that you're pissed off about, it's going to show up in friends in the future. This is a pattern in your life, and with all patterns, they repeat unless you break them apart and replace them. So, once you've checked in with yourself, check in with your friend. It's as easy as picking up the phone and saying hello. And what do you say? How do you do this? You just lead with kindness. You can apologize for how you've contributed to the distance between the two of you. You can say, I've missed you. Their response will tell you everything you need to know about the friendship. And honestly, what happens to the friendship is beside the point. By choosing to check in before you unfriend, it tells me everything that I need to know about you. By hitting pause, by self-reflecting, that's the work that you do to become a better friend to yourself. Toxic coworkers and how you should not let a toxic coworker ruin your job, ruin your day, ruin your meeting. And we're going to talk about the 3 research-backed things that you need to do if you're dealing with a toxic coworker that is making you not enjoy your job or not enjoy being around them, whatever it is. Toxic coworkers are a major problem. They're a major problem for team productivity. They destroy culture. They impact how much gets done. They certainly probably impact your enjoyment at work. And there are things that you can do based on the research in order to address and deal with a toxic coworker, and also to define the boundaries that you need to have so that you're not impacted by them. So we got this question, and so we're going to spin off this question, but the advice goes for any time you're dealing with somebody at work who's toxic, okay? Because one of the nice things about being at work is that if the person is toxic, oftentimes you've got more structure around the relationship because you have a boss, because you have HR, because you have team dynamics to help you coach, nudge, and I guess inspire in some ways, or inform this person that the behavior really isn't working for the team or for you. And I'm going to give you the 3 pieces of research and advice that come from Harvard Business School and some researchers there that will really work. So here's a question from Natasha. I absolutely love my job, but my company recently hired a new employee from my department who is awful. Awful. And Natasha even wrote in all caps that she's awful. She doesn't take responsibility for any of her mistakes. She takes her anger out on her coworkers and doesn't seem to have respect for anyone in the company. She is unbearable to work with. So, Natasha, if you've got somebody that's taking her anger out on coworkers and she has no respect for people, that would be unbearable, and I'm glad you're writing this. And so I want to draw a line in the sand. So first of all, there are certain behaviors that go way beyond being toxic. Sexual harassment, harassment of any kind, stealing, immoral behavior. Those are things that not only you shouldn't deal with, but HR needs to know about them. And so if that's what's going on with a coworker, you need to get your boss and you need to get HR involved, because that's a whole different level than just toxicity. Toxicity is referring to what Natasha's talking about, which is the behavior patterns in people that create a negative space for everybody else. And those can include gossiping. If you've got a coworker that's constantly fluttering by your office and wants to gossip about what's going on at work, that's a toxic person. If you got somebody that backstabs people, if you've got somebody that interrupts and dominates the corporate culture or meetings, that can become a toxic situation for culture. If you've got somebody that's constantly raising their hand or agreeing to do things, but guess what? They never follow through. Yours truly? I used to be that kind of person. I used to be the yes woman. And then I just wouldn't do anything. Like, honestly, I was literally the world's worst employee at a number of my jobs. I was the toxic person. I was also miserable, which is why I was doing that. And that's a very important point. A lot of people that act out at work are miserable. And so I think one of the things, before I tell you the 3 things, there we are. We just lost our signal. Oh no. Tracy, are we okay? I want to make sure that we still have our friends on Instagram or on Facebook and YouTube. Are we still okay?
Nothing from her yet. I'll let you know.
You might want to call her. So,
No, she's texting. Okay.
We're okay?
We're good.
Okay, it said lost signal. Okay, great. So I also want to put that in to the mix of the 3 things I'm about to share with you in terms of the advice, because I think it's really important for your personal boundaries to use what I always talk about, which is empathy. Understand that anybody that's acting out, it doesn't excuse the behavior, it explains it. And it also allows you to separate yourself emotionally. That person is likely miserable. That person has a bad life, which is why they treat people badly. And so if you can start to really use empathy to put it on them versus making it that they are doing something to you, that can help you from getting hooked emotionally. However, even when you distance yourself, you still have to do something about it. And so here's what you're going to do. According to Harvard Business Review, the single most important factor in the success of a team, the success of a culture, is the quality of the relationships between colleagues at work, between the people on a team. And Natasha, you know this because you're experiencing somebody who's toxic. She takes her anger out on you. She doesn't take responsibility for her mistakes. She's disrespectful to people. And of course, this is going to create a horrible environment to work in. So here are 3 things that you can do immediately in order to fix this situation. Number 1, and you're gonna hate this. Number 1, you have to talk to them. Hinting is not allowed, and here's why. Based on the research, the majority of people lack self-awareness at work. You get that? The person who's disrespecting you likely doesn't even know what they're doing. The person who's taking his or her anger out on you likely doesn't know how it's impacting you. You see, when people do this, when they have these kind of toxic patterns, they've been getting away with them for so long because nobody has had the courage to cross-check them verbally on it. And that's where you come in. Lucky you. You're in their life because your purpose in their life is to be the one person that has the courage to actually sit down and have a candid conversation about it. So what are you going to do? How do you have that candid conversation? First of all, try not to make them wrong. Try not to come in and shame them and tell them all the horrible things they're doing, because you'll immediately create a situation where they're defensive. And if the research bears out from Harvard Business School and they actually had no idea that they were doing it, they might get defensive. The better way to do it, the more effective way to do it, is to explain how their behavior impacts you. And when you do that, most people are mortified because most people are venting or are disrespectful and they're not even thinking about the impact it has because nobody's ever told them. And the other thing that's really important when you have this conversation is come up with specific examples. So if you've got this toxic coworker, Natasha, for the next couple days, write down very specific examples of exactly what happened, exactly what this toxic coworker did, and exactly how it made you feel. And the reason why you want to do specific actions is because most of us are so unaware that just generally saying you're very disrespectful and it makes me feel demoralized. It makes me not want to come into work. It makes me not want to be your colleague. It makes me not want to volunteer to help you. Most of us just feel like horrible when something like that is told to us, but we don't really know how to check the behavior. But if you say, oh, well, we were in a meeting and I shared an idea and you said, well, that's really not going to work. I think it's a waste of our time to do that. Kind of stupid. When you demean my ideas publicly, it makes me not want to speak. You're talking down to me. Whoa, if I hear it that way, wow. Now I know what we're talking about. And here's the other thing. You can actually give them some advice. So the next time we're in a meeting, if you disagree with something that I have to say, it's fine to disagree, but you don't have to make it personal. And that will give them the training that they need. And, that's the hardest thing to do. Have the conversation. The second thing. Oh, and here's one final thing when you ask the feedback. You might want to ask them if they have any feedback for you, because then it becomes more of a dialogue and they may have feedback for you. For all you know, you're behaving in a way that's triggering them to disrespect you. You don't know. And unless you have the candid conversation, which you're going to have to be brave and courageous to do, nothing's going to change. Okay, so candid conversation. Number 2, you got to raise your own game. And so what is the game that you play at work? you got to get out of the head that it's all about you. The best team members are always thinking about how to make the team better. The best team members are loyal to the team. The best people to work with are the ones that are in it together. And so in order for you to get your toxic colleague to shift behavior, you got to model it. And here's the interesting thing about the research. When people are working with coworkers or on a team where people collaborate and where you have honest conversations, it creates what we call psychological safety, which basically just means I feel safe working with you. I know that if I come to you with feedback, you'll listen. I know that if I tell you how your behavior is impacting me, you'll actually care. I know that if you need help, you'll come to me, and I know if I need help, I can come to you. That's what psychological safety means. You're a safe person and hopefully a fun person to work with. So you've got to model that. That means you got to ask for support. That means you got to have direct conversations, and it means you got to support your team members too. And do you realize that when you work with other people that do this, team members are 35 times more likely to show visible commitment to your success. And they're 47% more likely when you model it to work hard to build and maintain your trust. So don't ever get resigned in thinking that the way that you behave won't impact how somebody else is behaving around you. Another thing that you absolutely have to do is you have to go and talk to your boss if the conversation continues. You have to. And the reason why is it takes just one person to ruin a culture. It takes just one person to ruin a team dynamic at work. If you allow toxic behavior to continue on, it will destroy the work for everybody that has to work with them. It literally is like a skunk. Toxic people at work are like a skunk. You don't have to see them to smell them. You don't have to be next to them to feel the impact of their stink. And so if you've had the conversation and you've also been modeling the behavior and nothing is changing, it's time to take it upstairs. It's time to go to your boss. And the reason why it's important to go to your boss, and what are you going to go to your boss with? You're going to have a candid conversation. In fact, you're going to have the exact same one with your boss that you had with your toxic, skunky coworker. And you're going to give the boss specific examples, and you're going to explain what you explained to your coworker, and then you're going to ask your boss to hold a team meeting. Not to indict anybody, but to basically draw very clear lines in the sand about what are the team norms that are acceptable and what is not acceptable. And here's what's interesting. When a manager or a boss defines norms, the team is 73 times more likely to work hard to keep them. And here's the kicker. They're 125 times more likely to address the situation if there's somebody on the team who is not operating within the norms. You know, it's so obvious. I mean, think about it. If somebody were to walk in to work and put their feet up on the desk and turn on porn and be sitting at their desk watching porn, would that be the norm for your workplace? I don't think so, unless you're working for Playboy or you're working in the porn industry. That would be so out of the norm that everybody would address it immediately, period, full stop. And what I want you to understand is that when you take responsibility for how you're acting on the team, and you're collaborative, and you're supportive, and you're putting the team first, and you're modeling that behavior, and when you also bring the courage, and you dare, as Brene Brown says, to be brave enough to have honest conversations with your colleagues about what's acceptable and what's not based on how things are impacting you, you personally shift the culture in a positive direction. So it comes back to the core message that I always have for you. No matter what's happening around or to you, you hold the power, because you always have the power to have an honest conversation. You always have the power to discuss how things are impacting you. You always have the power to make requests. And you certainly have the power to draw boundaries. And you also have the power, by the way, if the culture gets worse and worse, or you just are tired of it because it's not changing, to go find a different job. The power is always in you. And I think that's something that's so important to constantly remind yourself. I get that I don't like where I am, but what could I do to change it? How can I change how I think about this? And I'm telling you right now, you know this. The second you start changing how you think about a situation, the situation changes. The second you start changing how you think about what your options are, you start to see them. The second you stop thinking that you're stuck or that you're a victim and you start thinking about how you solve something, you start to see solutions. And so the answer is always in you. And now you know the 3 easy steps, thanks to the research at the great folks at Harvard Business School, to address effectively a toxic coworker. And you also know, I think, 2 very important things. Number 1, based on the research, the majority of us have no clue how we're showing up at work. We're not self-aware, which is why it's so important for you to have conversations. And the second thing is, the second norms get defined and people start acting within them in your team, the team shifts and the productivity and the enjoyment and the collaboration will shift too. And you personally could be the change agent that makes it happen. So we've been getting a ton of questions about being paralyzed with the fear of what other people think. And this is so commonplace. I think every human being on the planet is paralyzed in some aspect or some area of their life because they're concerned about what their parents or what their friends or what their friends on Facebook or what their colleagues or what their upline or their downline or whatever, what their neighbors are going to think. If you are struggling with this and you have not found it helpful to attack your thinking patterns, then here's a trick that I want you to try to break the pattern of being paralyzed by what other people think. I want you to pick one thing that you've been wanting to do, that you've been thinking about, but you have stopped yourself from doing because you're concerned about what other people think. Let me give you some examples. Maybe you've wanted to go on a wellness retreat, but you think your spouse will roll their eyes at you, so you haven't done it. Maybe you have a particular Facebook post or a blog. So many of you want to start a business or start creating art, but you're terrified of putting yourself out there because of what other people will think. Today, we're going to break that pattern. What you're going to do is you're going to pick one thing you've been stopping yourself from doing, and you're going to do it. You're going to do it. And the reason why I want you to do this is because I know that if you're still paralyzed, you have not been able to change your thinking patterns yet. That's cool. No problem. We're going to try a different tactic. I want you to change this paralysis through action. Because if you sign up for that class, if you go on that retreat, if you create your art, if you post that blog post, if you start that business, you will be proving to yourself through the actions that you're taking that you don't care what other people think. Try that today. Let me know, number 1, what you've stopped yourself from doing, and number 2, what you're committing to doing today. Because one way to break this is to attack the thoughts and change the thoughts and get into action first. The other way to do it is to recognize that you're paralyzed, pick one thing that you're going to do, and actually get it done. How many of you are struggling with the issue of setting boundaries with family members and then feeling this level of, quote, guilt when you start to do so? If you relate to this is going to be incredibly helpful information that I'm about to share with you. If you have any questions, just put them right in the comments. I might have some time to take some questions. But first we're going to talk about setting boundaries, and then we're going to get into guilt. Okay, so let's talk about setting boundaries. So interestingly, Lisa is already setting boundaries because did you hear what she said? She has stopped reaching out because why would you step into an emotional boxing ring only to get punched in the face, right? So she's stopped reaching out, but she has remained in contact on Facebook where she has liked posts, which is a very positive way to interact with somebody. She's commenting in positive ways, very positive way, make short little comments. It's literally like giving somebody a hug from far away. When you see somebody liking your posts, leaving positive comments, it stimulates a dopamine release. And so it literally does have a positive impact on the other end without you getting entangled emotionally. So she has set boundaries. So question number 1, how do you know when you need to set boundaries? Here's how you can think about it. So think about your relationships on a scale from 1 to 10, right? 1 to 10. 1 being that it's an absolutely fabulous relationship, no issues whatsoever. You're super happy about this person. You're super happy about your connection with this person. 10 is It is so triggering. You're so uncomfortable. You can barely be around the person. You have a visceral reaction. Boundary, 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 boundary. If you are anywhere in the range of 6 to 10, it is time to think about boundaries. And what are boundaries? I'm going to show you. Hey, Oakley! Let me see if Oakley can hear me. Oh! Can you know those snow globes in your room? Would you mind bringing them down? I want to show everybody on this live stream something. So I want to show you something about boundaries. I'm so psyched he's home because I know he wants to say hello, and I can't wait to show you this, and I'm pretty sure.
Hi, everyone.
All right, cool. Dude, who gave you this?
Mousy.
Oh, my mom. My mom gave
Bye,
you this.
guys.
Bye, dude. You don't want to stay? You good? Okay, he's good. Snow globe from my mother to Oakley. Boundaries is a confusing word. I want you to think about force fields, right? I want you to think about the fact that if you're a 6 to a 10 with somebody that's triggering you, so 1 is blissful, 10 is visceral, just can't be around that person. You need to think about force fields, because if they're part of your family, you might have to see them unless they're dangerous or destructive or they're racist or they're bigoted, in which case you don't have to see them and you can make those boundaries very clear. So I think about toxic people like snow globes, right? They love to shake crap up. They love to shake stuff up, and they love to especially shake you up and poke at you and trigger you. And look at all that crap that they're stirring up. Now, the interesting thing about a snow globe is that this is like representative of your head, okay? And so I like snow globes as a visual for when you're talking about boundaries, because they can both represent the person who triggers you. So visualize your mom or your son or your ex-husband or your brother or your sister-in-law or that cousin or whatever it may be, and how whenever they do that stuff that triggers you, it's like they're shaking their own globe, and their own head does this. So a force field boundaries basically means that when the toxic person in your family starts doing this to their own head and to the own situation, let that crap that gets stirred up stay in their head. You want a boundary. You don't want to climb in the globe with them and get all shaken up either, right? You want distance from them. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about boundaries. It's not just physical distance, it's emotional distance. So that when you see their stuff shaking up, when you see them starting to throw the shame and the guilt and all that crap around, you realize, whoa, look at how much unresolved garbage they have in their head. Wouldn't that stink to live with all this kind of stuff in your head? I mean, come on. How terrible would it be to be such an emotional, toxic basket case that you got to use shame and guilt and stir things up all the time because you can't live otherwise? The secret to boundaries with your family is realizing that their stuff needs to stay in their globe. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to operate in a way that when they start shaking their globe, that you all of a sudden start getting shaken up in your head. Their stuff stays with them, okay? That's what boundaries mean. And I find this visual to be extraordinarily helpful when I'm dealing with toxic people, because it allows me, here's the secret, I literally visualize when somebody is starting to do something that's really like toxic or annoying or like whatever. They're throwing a little hissy fit about something that's stupid as a way to get control of a situation in a family, because family is all about power dynamics and being the center of attention, right? When families don't work, that's what's not working about them. That somebody's upset and they're trying to put the attention on themselves and they're trying to control what's going on. So they shake. Shake, shake, shake. They use all kinds of emotional garbage to shake the globe. So when I'm around somebody that's like that, I visualize literally a snow globe on top of their shoulders. And visualizing that for me allows me to set an emotional boundary and go, whoop, force field's up. They're busy shaking stuff. That's about them. Doesn't have anything to do with me, because shame is a weapon. Guilt is a weapon that people use to manipulate you. And that's why it is so important. Now, I also have a 6-month rule. A 6-month rule for people that are toxic, that are constantly doing this kind of stuff with you. If you love them, give them 6 months. Offer up options to help them. Offer up options around therapy, books to read. Talk to them. Does it bother you that you're this upset about this kind of thing? Have you ever wanted to try to resolve it? Have you ever wanted to feel more settled? Because what happens when you stop shaking? All of that crap that you stir up starts to settle. It's pretty amazing. But what's interesting about toxic people is that oftentimes they don't want help. You want to know why? Because if I can't do this, I don't know how to control you. And the second you stop reacting to this, I'm going to do more of this because I don't know how to control you when you don't react to it. And so the secret is don't step into the globe with them. For 6 months, offer support, offer resources. And if after 6 months somebody in your life is not willing to stop doing this to themselves and to you, you know it's time for very significant boundaries, perhaps even cutting them out, if it's that distressful to you. They'll get the message all right. They'll get the message. And first they're going to freak out though, because they manipulate you by doing this, right? How many of you jump the second that your mom or your dad throws the guilt around? How many of you feel bad when your brother or your sister makes you feel bad about what you didn't do based on what they wanted you to do? The second you stop reacting to that stuff, they're going to shake a lot more, and then they're going to get really, really lonely. And then they're going to realize what I'm doing isn't working, so I now need to change. You can only change your response, so stop responding to people that do this. You got it? We just got a great question from Claire about the holidays and dealing with your family and drawing boundaries. Okay, you ready? Listen up, because we could all use this particular advice. The holidays are here, Mel, and even though it's a time I should be feeling cheerful and festive, I'm full of anxiety over spending time with my toxic family. Every year it's the same thing. Inappropriate comments, questions that totally deplete me, and it makes me wonder if this is even my family. Can you please help? Signed, Claire. Claire, you shouldn't feel alone because so many people have anxiety about toxic relationships related to their families and how they have to confront them during the holidays. So here's the thing I want you to think about when it comes to the holidays. Holidays can be one of two things when you have toxic relationships with your family. It can either be a personal challenge or it can be a chance to have a personal transformation. And the personal transformation that I'm talking about is not changing your mother or your annoying older brother or your racist aunt. I'm talking about whether or not you have a personal transformation, because you can't fully get rid of toxic situations or toxic people, but you can transform how you behave when you're around those kinds of people. So the holidays can be a chance for you to practice boundaries, practice self-control, to be emotionally resilient and strong and not get triggered, and to also have the courage to express the new you, to express your true self. So if you left home a long time ago, you've grown as a person, you've changed, you've evolved, and then every time you go back home, you feel like you've stepped into a time warp and you're suddenly 8 years old again, this is a chance to transform yourself so that when you walk in the door, you are who you are now, not who you used to be when you still lived at home. And so there's a couple things that I want you to think about before you go home, before you have the interaction, so that you are prepared emotionally to make this a transformation for yourself personally. Number one, don't assume the old role that you used to play. So just because you're in your childhood home or you're with people that you know from your childhood, do not make the mistake of falling back into old patterns. Don't suddenly start acting like the youngest one again, if you're the youngest in your family. If you're always been dad's favorite and everybody hates that, stop playing into it. So there are things that we do that we don't even realize when we step into our childhood homes or around the people that we grew up with, where we slip right back into old patterns. Make sure you know what those are so that you have them in check for yourself. Number two, this is a huge one. Don't take the bait. This was advice that I got from my brother a long time ago. Don't take the bait. You know that there are relatives and friends from your past that just love to cast the guilt. They just love to cause issues. They're constantly casting like a fisherman, all kinds of things out there. And if you're the kind of person like I used to be, when somebody gets upset, you grab the bait and then you start trying to make it okay, and the next thing you know, you're arguing with somebody over something really stupid. Just don't take it. Don't let yourself get triggered. If somebody's casting the guilt, let them cast. Don't hit that lure, you know what I'm saying? They're welcome to say whatever they want to say. If you don't react, there's no issue. You don't have to worry about making sure that your mom or your dad doesn't say that stuff. Just don't react to it. And you'll be shocked at how the dynamic changes. You know, this is another piece of advice that my friend Danielle gave me today, and it comes from the Calm app. You can also, before you go into the situation, visualize a really busy road. Now, in a very busy road, there are people that are passengers in those cars, and there are people that are pedestrians on the sidewalk who are watching the cars go by. I want you to think about the dynamic in your family as cars zipping down the highway, right? Everybody's got all kinds of issues and conversations and kids and this and that, and people want attention, and there's all kinds of things racing by. Your role when you're around your family is to be a pedestrian on the sidewalk, watching it all go by. This is another form of not taking the bait. The last thing you want to do when your mom pulls the guilt train up is to climb on board and be a passenger on that ride, okay? You know what I'm saying? You're going to stay on the sidewalk. You're not going to take the bait. You're just going to watch the traffic as it speeds and whips by. Don't climb in when the guilt car pulls up, okay? Next thing, this has also been a major thing for me, empathy. Empathy is a superpower. My relationship with my mom changed dramatically for the better when I stopped judging her and I started thinking about what she must be feeling. Seriously, like if you've got somebody in your life that's angry, that says hurtful things, that's disappointed or upset, all of those things, anger, pain, disappointment, it's all just a mask for hurt. So any kind of toxic behavior that you're seeing in other people, unless it's some sort of narcissism personality disorder, for most normal human beings, if they're exhibiting bad behavior, it's literally just unexpressed hurt. That's all that it is. And a healthy dose of empathy, like thinking about how hard it was in the household where your parents grew up, or thinking about all the struggles that maybe one of your siblings who's really annoying because they take up all the energy, how many struggles they've faced, or thinking about how lonely your aunt is because your uncle's died. Thinking from a point of view that's empathetic, it's amazing. It's very personally transforming, because it helps you set boundaries, it helps you not get triggered, it helps you to be more emotionally mature and resilient, and it will help you make these holidays an opportunity for personal transformation instead of a massive personal challenge. I really, really hope that that helps you have a much happier holiday season. The barrier is everybody gives a shit what other people are thinking.
Yeah.
And so they're on camera or they're on a microphone trying to be smart or concerned about whether or not they look good in the shot, concerned about how they sound, whether or not they stuttered, if their neck is turning red, like whatever it may be. And they're so up here that they're not actually being true to just saying what's right here.
Absolutely.
Whether you're speaking from the heart, speaking from the gut, like that is the skill to develop, is the ability to be more like an 11-year-old that gets on camera and can just be themselves instead of being a 49-year-old person censoring themselves.
Got it.
And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about the truth, when I talk about authenticity, that people really want to feel that connection. And the only way that they're going to feel that connection is if you do the work to remove the own veneer and the own barriers that you put in between you and other people. And the number one thing is everybody gives too much of a shit about what everybody else thinks.
Absolutely.
And you know who they think they're worried the most about? Their friends.
Yeah.
If I put this thing up, not for my friends, but for the people that I'm trying to build a rapport with online, my friends are going to judge me. Your friends. Seriously. If you're out to make a difference, if you're out to share something that is important to you, if your friends don't like it or don't support you, they're really not your friends.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, no, definitely makes total sense.
And it's a really hard lesson. It's a very hard lesson because everybody's always judging everybody else. That's why you can't worry about it.
Do you have like recommendations for how people just get started, like from moving from that, like to basically move from their mindset of I care too much to I don't care as much? Like, are there steps that you recommend people take?
The only step that really works is action.
Okay.
Because if you're stopping to think about what people are thinking or whether or not you're worried about what people are thinking, you've already fallen into the trap.
Okay.
The second that you push yourself to get started through the action itself, you are proving to yourself that even though you care what everybody thinks, you're gonna do it anyway.
Okay.
And so that's why I talk about the 5-second rule. The 5-second rule is how you interrupt the excuses, the patterns, the concerns, and the fears that you have, whether it's perfectionism, whether it's disappointing your parents, whether it's being judged by your friends, whether it's looking stupid, when you post something, whether it's screwing up and saying something that a bunch of trolls come after you for, right? All those things that everybody's concerned about, that can stop you forever.
Absolutely.
If you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you break the part of the brain where all of those trappings are, and you awaken your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that you're using when you're creating content, when you're speaking with courage, when you're learning something new. And so that's why this simple brain trick that I invented is exploding around the world, because every last one of us is exactly the same. Exactly the same. You and I, we want the same thing. We want to actually live a life where we get to express ourselves at the highest level. We're all want the same thing, and we're all stopping ourselves the same way, by thinking too much, by buying into the lies that self-doubt tells you. And so I'm here to tell you, you can cut that off at the knees. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you can make a 5-second decision. The second you feel that doubt, the second you feel that concern, the second you feel that fear, and you can literally feel it and actually move anyway. All right, so here's the thing about jealousy and passive-aggressive behavior from people, because people that give you the silent treatment or are passive-aggressive, you know, those people that give you a compliment, but when you stop and think about it, you're like, wait a minute, were they just actually trashing me? You know when people do that. When people are passive-aggressive, or they give you fake compliments, or they give you the silent treatment, typically that's fueled out of jealousy. And jealousy is nothing more than an emotion that people feel when you have something that they feel they deserve. And a lot of us feel jealousy because it's easier to be jealous of somebody and to stay in a negative state than it is to push yourself to do the work to get the thing that you want. And so it's almost like it's your unrealized dream showing up in your face. And what's also right in your face is the fact that somebody else worked for it and you haven't yet. And so instead of going, oh, note to self, time to start cheering for myself and use that example as something positive to motivate myself, a lot of people tend to be like, I hate you. I hate you because you have what I have. So here's what you're going to do when you deal with people that are passive aggressive or jealous. First of all, don't get triggered by it. That's their stuff. It's not your stuff. Second, you're doing the right thing. If people ask, share what worked for you. Third, distance yourself. You don't need to hang out with these people. If you're making positive changes in your life, hang out with the people that are cheering for you. Just because you've known people for years doesn't mean you have to hang out with them for the years to come. So distance yourself. And fourth, if it's really passive aggressive, say something. I literally got an email from a very close friend of mine, and this person had emailed me and wanted me to give advice about SEO, which is how you optimize your website for people to find you when they're Googling you. And the truth is, we don't do a lot of SEO because almost all of our business is social referral, which means that people are coming from social media. And I missed the email. I didn't even see it. I mean, I'm moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. I have ADD. I get at least 300 emails a day, seriously. And I live on planes during the week. And so occasionally I miss an email. So a week later, I literally get an email from this person that was like, thanks a lot. I guess you're too busy to respond. Like, completely not even passive aggressive. It was aggressive aggressive. And I wrote back, what the swear word? Don't talk to me like that. It's unacceptable. And next time I drop a ball, I have a lot going on, maybe you could just text me and say, hey, did you send the email? So before you get all offended, maybe because of whatever, you're envious of what I'm doing or you're insecure, I don't even know. Instead of lashing out at me, which is unacceptable, try just texting and assuming good intent, assuming I missed the email, assuming I'm busy, assuming I want to get back to you, assuming I'm researching something for you, instead of jumping on somebody because of your insecurity. And so here's the thing. You don't have to accept passive-aggressive behavior, and you shouldn't. People get away with that BS because nobody says anything to them, and it becomes a habit. And it becomes a way for somebody to deal with their jealousy and their insecurity by lashing out at you. And so I think it is fully within your boundaries and within your right, and it should be something that you develop the courage to do, that when somebody says something to you that is a fake compliment, that's actually a bash, or it is lashing out at you, you need to literally be like, unacceptable. Or, hey, I don't know if you meant it this way, but that actually felt like a slam and that's not cool. And if I've done something, say something to me. But you don't have to behave like that. So again, how do you deal with jealousy? Recognize it for what it is. It's their stuff. Number two, don't let it trigger you in terms of making you feel bad about you. Number three, spend less time with that person for sure. And number four, it is fully within your right to say that the way that you just talked to me is unacceptable. Please don't do it again. Please don't do it again. And you'll be surprised, because I find that most passive aggressive people and most people that act out of jealousy, they're never called out on it. And when you bring it to the light and you call it out for what it is in terms of how it makes you feel, the person's almost always mortified and apologetic, and they tend to change, at least how they interact with you, because they know they can't get away with it. So that's how I would deal with jealous people in your life. And the most important thing, hang out with people that cheer for you. This is so important. I can't say this enough. Behavior is contagious. They have proven this. Google the Framingham study. It was a really famous heart study that was done where they looked at human behavior over what's called a longitudinal study, which basically means they studied people for a number of years. And they found that you catch the behavior of other people. If you hang out with smokers over time, your objection to smoking lowers because you're hanging out with smokers and you become socialized to it, and you are more likely to smoke. If you hang out with happier people, if you hang out with people that are more successful than you, if you hang out with people that run all the time, guess what happens? You become socialized to those positive behaviors. The fastest way to make a behavior change is to hang out with people that are positive, that are cheering for you, that are up to cool stuff, that are so busy and engaged in their life, they don't have time for passive aggressive bullshit because they're busy building something and being appreciative. And that's who you should hang out with. And that's why I'm here. I'm so happy you're here watching me, because that's who I want to be in your life. I want to be somebody that's cheering for you. I want to be somebody that is demonstrating what it looks like to literally rise above the noise and rise above the negativity and constantly refocus yourself on what's going right. Constantly look on the horizon and don't see what's wrong. Look for solutions. And that's why I want to be the one, in case nobody else tells you, to tell you that I love you, because I know that's what you want in your life. And when you hang out with positive people like me, it's going to rub off on you. When you hang out with positive people that cheer for you like I cheer for you, it's going to rub off on you. And you know, what I believe is that you can change your life for the better, because you can change what you think about. You can change those patterns in your head, and you can change the small patterns of behavior, and that will change your life. Amanda on YouTube, how do I protect myself from negative people at work while trying to be positive? So I think about force fields. There are certain people in your life that are negative that you can't avoid. There are probably people at work, just like Amanda has, that are negative that you can't avoid because you got to work with them. There might be people in your family. There might be people in your household. There might be roommates that you have, or people in the classes that you're taking that are negative. Think about force fields, because energy is contagious. Just because somebody else is negative doesn't mean you have to let their negativity seep through into you. My greatest tool in dealing with negative people is to feel sorry for them. I know it's a judgy thing to do, but I feel like if I've got this negative person in my life or around me or at the coffee shop or whatever, isn't it interesting around negative people? They sort of vibrate this nastiness and this passive aggressive stuff, and their like body language is all like, ugh. Instead of letting that seep into you, what you want to do is get the force fields up and get yourself above that person so you can look at them and basically go, whoa, I wonder what happened to that person that would make them so negative. I wonder what that person's life or home life is like. That they walk into work and they feel like this. Feel sorry for them. There's something about feeling sorry for somebody else or asking yourself, God, what happened to that person to turn them into such a negative, and to be so hurt? That kind of perspective elevates you above the toxicity, including with your boss. And look, if you got a boss that's a very toxic person, force fields up. What happened to that person? Feel sorry for them and look for another job. You don't want to work for somebody that's toxic. It's not your job to save them. It's not your job to fix them. It's not your job to make their life easier. If there's somebody who is day in and day out toxic and toxic to you, do not make it your job to be their savior. Make it your job to save yourself. I really hope you see this. My question is, what do you do when certain people and situations trigger negative emotions in you? If sometimes seeing these people is unavoidable at times, are there tools I can use to brace myself before entering these situations and to not let things bother me so much? Absolutely. People are a huge trigger. And the reason why people are a huge trigger is because we all have very different energies, right? And tones of voice. And so somebody, oh God, my computer's, hold on one second. My computer is deciding that it is tired and wants to go to sleep on me. Uh-oh. Where is my, hold on. See? I'm not panicking. I'm problem solving. Here we go. Oh my God. Oh. Oh. Get in. Oh dear. And here is my, oh gosh, this is really embarrassing. They told me that my lunch was going to show up at 1:30. So can I let this guy in and I'll keep going? I'm really embarrassed. But see, this is real life. Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Good. I'm doing a live stream, so you're on camera. I just want to let you know. You don't have to unpack everything. I can do it. I'm really sorry for the interruption, everybody. I mismanaged this. But you're early, thank you, because I'm starving. I gave a speech this morning in Vegas and literally have had about this much to eat, and so I am starving. What's your name?
Felipe?
Felipe, thank you so much.
You're very
awesome.
welcome. And
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate you.
Toss lightly.
Awesome. You're the best.
Thank you very much. Have a nice
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you.
See, I ordered a salad, everybody, with a little protein.
Bye-bye now.
Bye. Have an awesome day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
So back to the question. I really hope you see this, Michael. Oh, people. So the really important thing is to try not to brace yourself, because when you're like, oh, about this, you're already tense and on edge. And so you're even more easily triggered. I would ask yourself, what is it about this person that triggers you? So is it just that they're irritating? Or is it that they say things that confirms your limiting beliefs? They treat you in a way that triggers that limiting belief that you're trying to redirect. Couple tools that have really worked for me around people that trigger me. Number one, I always think about a force field. So I think about not bracing, but just having sort of a force field around me so that their stuff doesn't penetrate me. The second thing that has been hugely transformative for me is empathy. So I think that people that are jerks and people that are mean and people that snap and people that are negative and people that are grating, people that are rude, I think that they must have a horrible life. And I often say to myself, I wonder what happened. There's that tool again. I wonder what happened to them that made them this miserable. And it works. That technique works with bosses. It works with parents. It works with friends. To come from a little bit of empathy and realize it's not about you. There is something that is completely off with them. It's also helped me a lot to understand narcissism, and that narcissism is and can be a disorder. And if you are dealing with somebody who's a narcissist, you're dealing with somebody that actually doesn't have the capacity to care or be interested in other people. It truly is all about them. It's not personal. It's their issue. And so you got to be careful though when other people's behavior trigger the issues that you're working on. That's where the force field comes up. So I'll deal with the baloney I say to myself in my own mind, but I don't let other people do things that confirm it. Does that make sense? I literally just put the force fields up and I'm like, this is a miserable human being. This is an untransformed human being. This is an unhappy person. And can you imagine how awful it must be to live inside their brain all day long? I just come from that space. If it is a work situation, though, where somebody is treating you poorly, you have to also draw some boundaries. You really do. I realize your boss may be a jerk, but you can stand calmly as they're yelling and be like, hey, I'm happy to do whatever you ask, but do not yell at me, please. You can draw those boundaries because a lot of people that are irritating and annoying and grating, they don't even realize what they're doing. They're so triggered emotionally. It's so about them. They're so untransformed and they live at this plane. They don't do any self-awareness, no personal development. They don't even know the half of they haven't even occurred to them to reset their mindset. Hasn't even occurred to them to care about other people. Hasn't even occurred to them how their own behavior is impacting you. So also be clear that if these are people like family members that you have to see, you can draw boundaries and you should. If there are particular things that people do that irritate you, that trigger you, you can sit down and explain it because the person might not even realize it. My mom and I had a really powerful conversation a couple of years ago where we were in this cycle where we could spend about 3 days together on a vacation and then we would have a blow up. And we did. We had this big blow up about something really stupid. And then it was interesting. She said to me, why do you always take my blow up so damn personally? I'm just the kind of person that has an explosion. I get it out of me and then it's over. Why do you always think that it has something to do with you? It has nothing to do with you. And it was the first time, and this took me 47 years to realize that, holy cow, like part of the dynamic that was not working between my mom and I is that I took everything so damn personally because my issue is being afraid of disappointing people. She wasn't disappointed at all. She just was irritated. And it had, I might have done something to irritate her, but she has her explosion. She's done. It has literally changed our relationship because I changed how I processed her getting upset. And that only happened because we sat down and talked about it. And she was clear with me that, look, I'm just the kind of person that does this and stop making it about you. Okay. It's nothing. This is how I move on. And I'm like, okay, I totally get it now. Mel, what do I do if my family still doesn't understand me at the age of 55? They can make me feel like I'm wrong. They make me feel like I'm wrong and I can't fix it. So I'm going to attack this question. What do I do if my family doesn't understand me? They make me feel like I'm wrong and I can't seem to fix the dynamic. First of all, we got to talk about two things. One is your family's behavior and what you can do to potentially influence their behavior toward you. And the second thing is your processing and reaction to their behavior. So the first thing I want you to understand is that you can't change somebody else. If your family does not understand you, and if they say things or operate in a way that makes you feel wrong, you will probably never change that dynamic. And so one of the things that you need to do is you need to accept that this is just how it is. And you need to stop wishing that things could be different. And you need to focus your energy on changing your thought process and your actions in terms of how you respond to their behavior. Because there is the fact that your family does whatever your family does. They make you wrong, they criticize you, they don't pay attention to you, they spoil the other people, whatever it is that The actions are, it is what it is. If you're in your 50s and this is how it's always been, this is probably how it's always going to be. And the faster that you accept that and you stop going to the source that hurt you to try to find your healing, the faster you will gain control. That's number one. Number two, let's reframe misunderstand. Because I think that when people misunderstand you or criticize you, like you could flip this and you could see it as a source of power. You know, there's this great quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson: to be great is to be misunderstood. Maybe you're different from your family. Maybe you're the one that's going to break some generational cycles. Maybe you are living out your truth and you're living your life on your terms. And that's very confronting to your family because they don't understand it. They don't need to understand what you're doing. You need to understand what you're doing. And that's why you also need to practice habits of self-validation and self-love and self-support. You got to stop looking outside of yourself for the validation, love, and support that you need. And you need to give it to yourself. Because when you can learn how to look yourself in the mirror, and even if your family doesn't understand you or they make you wrong or they say stupid shit that makes you, used to make you feel bad, if you can look in the mirror and say, well, I like who I am, I like my life, it might sting a little if your parents don't approve of what you're doing or your siblings question what you're doing or they don't support you the way you deserve to be supported. But their criticism won't change how you feel about you. So that's rule number one. Double down on habits of self-acceptance, on self-celebration, and stop looking for the validation, love, and support that you need in people who cannot give it to you. That's number one. Number two, I just said that you cannot change somebody else, but you can influence them by focusing on yourself and by coming from a different place. If you're in this sort of deadlock dynamic with your family and you're going to them and you feel misunderstood, I guarantee you on the other side, if you took the time, and I'm not suggesting you want to, but if you do want to improve your relationship, there's a simple thing about relationships. The one thing that will change any relationship dynamic, whether it's family or friends or romantic, committed partnership, the one thing that changes any relationship is you going out of your way to make sure somebody else's fundamental needs are met. Are you showing up in a way that your family feels seen and heard and appreciated? Are you reaching out? Are you acknowledging what they're doing? Are you complimenting them on the things that they're doing? For many, many years, my mom and I were at a complete deadlock. We loved each other to death, but we didn't understand each other. And because we didn't understand each other, because in many ways we're super similar and in other ways we're very different, because we didn't understand each other, there was a lot of pent up hurt because we wanted to feel connected. We wanted to feel supported by one another. But because we live our lives so differently, she's in the Midwest, in the house that I grew up in a really small town. I went east for college. I never came home. We both hate the fact that we don't live near each other. And instead of somehow coming together and figuring out new ways to be more deeply connected rather than living next door to each other, we stopped understanding each other. And that led to a lot of this. And when you stop understanding each other, then you cross your arms and go, oh, well, I'm over here and why are you over there? And, if come on over the line and then I'll feel safe with you again. And so we were in a standoff for a long time, a lot of misunderstanding, kind of hurt feelings, bristly phone calls. When I'd get together, either going to see my folks or then coming here, it'd be tense because there was so much unresolved stuff because we didn't understand each other. I wanted her to be loving. She wanted me to be loving. I wanted her to make more of an effort. She wanted me to make more of an effort. Does this sound familiar, everybody? Well, if you want to stop the tug of war that comes from misunderstanding, drop the rope and understand that everybody on the planet just wants to be seen, to be heard, and to be celebrated. And one of the things that has profoundly changed my relationship with my mom, it's started to heal it, is first of all, I've done a tremendous amount of work on myself for my own childhood trauma, my own nervous system. Healing yourself is the greatest way to heal any other relationship, because every relationship starts with you. But the second thing that I did is 3 days a week, I have an alarm that goes off in my phone at the same time that says, call mom. And I pick up the phone and I call my mom. And the only intention behind that call is to just check in and ask her a bunch of questions about what's going on and to show up in a way, no strings attached, that makes my mom know that I see her, I hear her, and I appreciate and celebrate her. And I notice that the more frequently we talk and check in, the way more connected we are, the way more we understand one another. And it's been and was one way for a long time, because I did it with no strings attached. I did it not to fix my mom. I did it to empower a dynamic where I was showing up differently. And by me showing up differently, it has created a way for her to show up differently, because she now feels emotionally safe with me. She now feels like I understand her again. She now, and says this, I feel like you're back. I feel like the daughter that left for college and never came home has actually come home. And that has happened because I've worked on myself, because I have stopped doing what you're doing, which is crossing your arms and going, nobody understands me, and why don't they support me, and why don't they show up differently? And I've instead said, this matters to me. So I'm going to give my folks what I have been wishing I'd get from them. And that shifts everything, because behind any person that doesn't understand you, or any person that you have some kind of toxic dynamic, I promise you, there is either their own childhood trauma and untreated stuff that they don't have any idea that is impacting their current relationships, or more likely, or on top of, there's hurt feelings. Somebody feels disrespected, somebody feels invisible, somebody feels disconnected. And human beings, instead of leaning toward each other, tend to cross their arms and lean back. It's a protection mechanism. So that's a whole lot that I just threw at you, but I think I can sum it up. If you feel misunderstood by your family, is number one, stop going to them for understanding and start giving it to yourself. Double down on the habits in the High Five Habit book, habits of self-acceptance, habits of seeing yourself, habits of understanding yourself. The next thing that you can do is work on your own healing. That's the best way to heal any other relationship, is heal yourself first, and get your nervous system regulated, get your childhood trauma treated, get yourself in order so that you can look yourself in the eye and be proud of and loving of yourself. And then the final piece of advice is, if you truly want to try to shift the dynamic, change how you're showing up. And focus on acting in a way that the people in your life that you want to connect with feel seen, heard, and appreciated by you. And frequency of phone calls, remembering important dates, asking questions and caring, and doing it with no strings attached is the fastest way to turn a relationship around. And I think it's really important that you, if you take that on, you do it because you want to be the kind of person that shows up that way. But you drop the expectation that somebody else will actually change. You're changing how you show up because that's what aligns with your values. Got it? Good. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.